Hungarian Folk Tales. The Rich Man's 3 Sons. Once upon a time, there lived a rich man. One day, one of the rich man's farms burned to the ground, and nothing was left but a pile of smoking embers. The rich man had made his fortune as a moneylender, and one of his unhappy borrowers had burned his home down. The rich man felt terribly sad, and not even the priest could comfort him, as he was sure the man would eventually go to hell because of the cruel way he had made money all his life. That may well be true, the rich man thought. But if someone should burn down my other farm, how will my 3 sons survive? The rich man thought and thought about this until he decided to find all 3 a job. He made the eldest son a soldier because he was very bright. He made the middle son a blacksmith's apprentice. And then he spoke to the youngest of his 3 sons and said, "I think you will make a fine barber, son of mine." The youngest son had no objections, and all 3 agreed to do their father's bidding, as anything was better than working the land. The eldest liked the idea of marching around with a silver sword by his side, while the other 2 were happy that they would not have to hoe or mow now that they had proper trades. The years passed by, and the rich man became old, although he had never been a young man, and he spent all his time thinking how he could one day avoid hell's fiery furnace that had been promised to him by the priest. But the rich man's 3 sons did not have a care in the world. His son the soldier danced his days away, while his son the blacksmith and the barber spent all their days making merry. Then the day came when the sons received a letter saying that they should all 3 return home at once because their father's days were numbered, and he wanted to see his sons. So all 3 sons journeyed home and thought they would soon inherit a fortune from their rich father. When they arrived, the rich man asked his son the soldier, "Well, my son, what manner of soldier have you become?" "Well, my father, the emperor has no finer soldier than I, and I wield a silver sword like no other. The other day, it began to rain while we were on parade, and all the other soldiers got wet, but not I, because I drew my sword and span it around so swiftly above my head that I remained dry." The rich man nodded. "I'm glad, my son, that you have become such a fine soldier, and I have no need to worry about your fortune." Then he asked the middle son, "And you, my son, how do you fare as a blacksmith?" "Well, my father, there's no finer blacksmith in this land or any other beyond its borders. Only yesterday, a coach passed by the smithy, drawn by 4 grey horses. The lord driving the coach said that all 4 horses needed reshoeing, but he had no time to stop. My master stood and scratched his head, but while he stood there, I swiftly shoed all 4 horses, and the coach did not have to stop for a single second." The rich man also noted his middle son's words. "You are indeed a master of your trade, my son, and I have no need to worry about your fortune. And you, my youngest son, are you also a master of your trade? You ask me if I'm a master barber, father? Well, nothing proves it better than the fact that I shaved a rabbit clean while it was running yesterday, and I did not cut its soft skin once." The rich man also noted his youngest son's words. and then spoke to all three. I see, my sons, that you all have the skill to make your own fortunes, and you have no need of mine. And so now I can use all of my money to pay myself out of hell's fiery furnace. Then the rich man called the priest, gave him all his money, and told him to give it to the poor. So the rich man's 3 sons were given nothing for their pains and ran away, never to return. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Bladder, the Straw, and the Hot Coal. Once upon a time, far, far away, to the border and beyond, there lived a bladder. One day the fat bladder began to feel bored, snapped its string and said, "Oh, I think I will go out and see the big wide world." So it rolled and it rolled down the road, and as it rolled, it met a straw. "Straw, where are you going?" "I'm going to hide. I fell out of the stove when the wife was lighting the fire, and I thought I'd run away." "Then let's go together." And the 2 of them walked and rolled, and as they did so, they met a hot coal. "Hot coal, where are you going?" "I'm going to hide. I fell out of the stove when the wife was poking the fire, and I thought I'd run away." "So let's go together." "Let's go." So the 3 friends rolled and walked and talked together. And they journeyed on until they came to a stream. There the bladder jumped into the water and quickly swam to the other side. The straw also jumped quickly into the water and swam to the other side. Then the hot coal began to cry, "How shall I swim to the other side? If I jump into the water, I'll stop being hot. Take me to the other side." Bladder sat on the riverbank and laughed so much that it burst apart and killed all three. So that was the end of 1 and 2 and 3. And if you know more to this story, you can tell it to me. Hungarian Folk Tales. Starving Mathias. Once upon a time, very far away, there lived a very poor man. He was as poor as could be and had nothing to his name. His name was Starving Mathias, for he had nothing to eat. One day Mathias made up his mind to go into the forest and hang himself. He looked hard at all the trees to see which one would be best for the job. And as he was busy doing this, the devil appeared before him and asked, "What are you looking for, Mathias?" "I'm looking for incense to smoke you out of hell." This frightened the devil so much that he promised to give Mathias anything he wanted. "Then give me 200 pounds of gold." And so the devil gave him what he wanted. Mathias returned home very contented. The devil also went home and told the other devils what had happened. The other devils told him that 200 pounds of gold was far too much and thought how best to get it back. Then one of the devils had a very simple idea. "I shall simply go and ask him to give it back." So the devil went to him and said, 200 pounds of gold is really far too much, so I suggest the strongest between us should take it as a prize. I challenge you to a fight." "I won't fight you, devil. I'll simply throw you to the ground so that you'll never get up again. But my grandfather is 188 years old and lives deep in the forest. You should go and fight him instead." So the devil and Mathias went to the forest, where Mathias told the devil to enter a cave. So the devil went in, and what do you think he found? A bear. But the devil didn't know it was a bear. The bear was lying on the ground, and so the devil woke it up. The bear was far stronger, but the devil managed to slip from the bear's grip and hurry away home again. Then the devils gathered for a second time to discuss how best to get the 200 pounds of gold back from Starving Mathias. Next, the fastest devil went to see Mathias. "Mathias, the 200 pounds of gold is far too much, so let's see which one of us can run faster, and he shall have the gold. I won't compete against you, because if I start running, I'll be so fast that I'll knock down the walls of hell. But I have a son called John who will run fast against you. Come with me to the forest, because that is where John takes his midday nap." Mathias knew exactly in which bush the rabbit hid. "Wake up, John, wake up and take a race against the devil." The rabbit heard this, jumped to its feet and began to run as fast as the wind. The devil gave chase. But by the time the devil reached the forest, there was no sign of the rabbit. "Who would have thought that your son could have run so fast?" And with that, the devil walked back to hell. The devils gathered again to discuss the matter, and then the strongest of them said, "This time I shall go and bring back the gold." So he went to see Mathias and said to him, 200 pounds of gold is far too much. The one to win the gold will be the one of us who can carry the horse 6 times around the yard and rest no more than 3 times in total." This challenge worried poor Mathias, because he knew the horse was far too heavy for him. Then he had a thought and said to the devil, "You do it first, and then I will follow you." So the devil lifted the horse and carried it around the yard 6 times, but by the time he was done, the devil was absolutely exhausted. Then Mathias said to the devil, "The way you lifted the horse and carried it around was really no great deed, and you even stopped to rest. Now I shall take the horse between my legs and take it 9 times around the yard without stopping, even once." When Mathias dismounted, he spoke to the devil and said, "You see, I am much stronger than you are. Although I took the horse between my legs, I had no need to take a rest." Defeated, this devil went home again. Once back, the devils discussed how they would regain the gold. At last, a devil stepped forth saying that he would bring back the gold. So off he went to see Mathias. £200 of gold is far too much, so the one of us who can scare the other more shall have the gold. We'll have you drink hot ink today. I'll drink it. What if we harness you to a yoke and have you plough smouldering embers in hell? I'll do it if I must. What if we put you in a steel pot and pour boiling lead on you? I'll bear it if I must. Now I'll scare you. The devil realised that the man was much braver, and so he rushed back to hell and told the others, "Beware of starving Matthias. Let him have the £200 of gold rather than perish, because that Matthias is a bigger devil than all of us put together." But when he died, he was not let into heaven. Off you go to hell. That's where you belong. You were good friends with the devils down there. So off Matthias went to hell, but the devils would not let him in either. Then poor Matthias sat down outside heaven's door and sits there to this day. If you go to heaven, you are sure to see him still. Hungarian Folk Tales. Dan the Dancer. The king mourned his beautiful wife for a year and a day. When his mourning was over, he had it announced all over the land that he would marry any maiden who could spin yarn of gold. One old woman heard this news and rushed home to her house to tell her ugly daughter. "Well, my dear, could you spin yarn of gold out of string?" Her daughter set about thinking and soon set her heart on becoming queen. Once, when her mother was away in the village, she shut all the doors, covered all the windows so as not to be seen by anybody, and began to spin yarn. She kept on at it for quite some time, but there was no way she could make yarn of gold out of old string. "Oh, I can't go on like this. If someone taught me how to spin yarn of gold, I'd give him my body and my soul, even if he was the devil himself." "Here I am, sweetheart. What do you wish?" The girl told him what, and asked him to teach her how to spin yarn of gold out of simple string. She said she'd give him anything he asked. "I'll teach you if you give me your body and your soul in a year from now." The girl agreed. "Sit here on this stool with your back to the door like me, you see, then say 3 times, 'Devla, devla disako.'" Then the devil began to spin yarn and, believe it or not, yarn of gold came spinning off the spinning wheel. Then the girl too sat down on the little stool with her back to the door and repeated 3 times, "Devla, devla disako." Then she set about spinning and, miracle of miracles, yarn of gold began to spin off the spinning wheel onto the spindle in her hand. "Well, my dear, I'll leave you now, but I'll be back when the year has passed. Do you understand our bargain?" I do, but before you go, please tell me your name." "I won't do that, but if you can guess, I won't take you away when the year's over." Then the girl carried on spinning until the candles had to be lit. And then her mother came home. "Goodness, my dear, is what I see true? Can you really make yarn of gold out of old string?" "Yes, I can, Mother. Hurry right away and tell the king the news." The king found it very hard to believe. "Well, your majesty, I swear upon my life it's true. Come and see for yourself." So the king set off to see for himself with 6 ministers, counts, barons, and generals. Not even the old oven had ever seen so many lords of the land gathered together before. It stood there gaping with its mouth so wide that it was unable to shut it ever again. Then the king and his lords all sat down and watched how the ugly girl spun yarn of gold out of string. The king was worried that he would have to wed such an ugly girl. But what else could he do? He sent a carriage drawn by 4 horses to fetch the girl, summoned a priest, and married her right away. The king slowly became accustomed to his new wife's looks, and soon he no longer saw her as ugly. They lived like this for quite some time, but as the days passed, the poor girl-turned-queen became sadder and sadder. What will become of me when the year is over? Both the king and the courtiers tried to cheer the queen up, but in vain. Then one day the king went out hunting with his men. He ordered his men to go right up to the top of the hill and set up camp under the largest tree. We have a problem, Your Majesty. We can't set up camp under the largest tree because a small man shaped like a monster has made a fire there. Maybe we shouldn't go there at all. On the contrary, we'll go and see who it is, even if it's the devil himself. And they reached the top of the hill, and there they saw a fire, and around the fire, a tiny man dancing around a huge pot with an enormous wooden spoon. Burn fire, burn flame, in this pot is what I make, a beautiful bride I will take, and Dan the dancer is no fake. As the king caught sight of him, he burst out laughing and went straight home to tell his wife so that she could have a good laugh too. And that's just what happened. The queen laughed so much that it seemed as though she had no worries in the world. Time went slowly by, and the year she had bargained would soon be reached at noon that day. On the strike of 12, just as the king and queen were about to eat a delicious bowl of soup, there was a knocking on the door. The queen could guess who it was. Who is it? It's me, sweetheart, the one who taught you how to spin yarn of gold out of string. The year's up and I've come to take you away. If you can say who I am, you can stay. You mean your name? It's Dan the Dancer. And to hell with you. Upon this, the little man burst with rage and slammed against the door, and all that was left of him was a big blob of tar. Then the king asked his wife how she knew who the man was. In her great fright, she told him all that had happened. Well, my love, if you can still spin yarn of gold out of old string after this, you can stay. But if you can't, you must leave here and never return. So the woman sat down and said, Devla, devla disako, and she began to spin. But it was no use. No yarn of gold would come off the spinning wheel. The woman had a fit, and in her rage, she flew against the door. There she turned into tar just like the devil. All the shoemakers and bootmakers went there from then on whenever they needed tar. And if I'm not mistaken, they go there still. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Witch. Once upon a time, there lived an old man who had 3 sons. When all 3 were fully grown, they decided to marry and told their father of their wish. Very well, but one at a time. I want you all to take a walk, and the one who returns with the prettiest flowers will be the first to marry. The 2 elder brothers did not even leave the village. Both of them had a sweetheart, so each of them brought a nice bunch of flowers back to their father. The youngest son, however, had no sweetheart, so he went out of the town to look for flowers. He walked and he walked until he eventually came to a vast forest, in the middle of which he came across an old palace surrounded by a flower garden. Oh, if only I could pick flowers in this beautiful garden. The youngest son was still standing there when a witch appeared in the garden and asked him, "Why are you so sad, my child?" Then the young man told her what his problem was. "If all you need are flowers, come with me and I shall give you some." Then she took him into the garden and picked a bunch of beautiful flowers. As soon as the poor man caught sight of the flowers, he said to his eldest sons, "Well, sons, it will be your younger brother who will marry first, because he has returned with the best blossoms." But the elder brothers complained to their father so bitterly that he eventually agreed to set a second test. Very well, the second test shall be he who brings back the prettiest kerchief shall be the one to marry first. So the sons went off, the two elder ones to their sweethearts in the village, and the youngest one to the witch in the forest. "What do you need this time, my child?" The youngest son told her, and so the old witch went back into the palace and brought the young man a beautiful gold-trimmed kerchief that bedazzled the boy. The two elder brothers also brought a kerchief each, but the youngest son's was by far the loveliest of the lot. The elder brothers were very upset, and so their father eventually agreed to set a third test. "Very well, go and bring me your sweethearts. He who brings me the loveliest girl shall be the one to marry first." This was easy for the two elder brothers because they both had sweethearts in the village. But where, oh where, should the youngest brother look for a bride? Who could he take to his father? Should he fetch the old witch who had given him the flowers and the kerchief? So the youngest son set off with his head hung low. He walked into the forest, stopped in front of the palace, and leaned against the fence with a face as sad as the autumn rain. "What's the matter with you, my child?" "Oh, don't even ask me what the matter is. My father told us that the son who took the prettiest sweetheart home would be the first to marry." "Don't hang your head, my child, but come with me to the palace. Here's a fireplace. Make a fire. With every flame that flickers up, a witch will appear before your eyes. Fear not and stand bravely there until you see the last and ugliest witch of all that will have a bunch of keys between her teeth. Then you need to snatch the keys, otherwise the rest of the witches will tear you apart. And now the rest is up to you." Saying nothing more, the old witch vanished. The young man made a fire in the fireplace, and as the flames began to grow and crackle, a witch emerged from the flames. The youngest son was so afraid that a shiver of fright ran down his spine. Then a second flame leapt forth, producing a second witch. Then many more witches followed this one. Eventually, the last witch appeared with a bunch of keys between her teeth. The youngest son gathered all his courage and snatched the keys, and, wonder of wonders, the ugly witch turned into a beautiful princess. The youngest son was too surprised to speak. All the witches then vanished from the room and were replaced by a throng of graceful maidens. Then the pretty princess said, "You must be very surprised. I'll have you know that I was the old witch who gave you the flowers and the kerchief. You must have been sent here by God, because I was a princess and a spell was cast on me. Had you not appeared, I would have remained an old witch, and now we shall be together for the rest of our natural days." The poor man was in good spirits and said, "Very well, I will let my elder sons marry too." And that they did, and their younger brother gave them each a house with plenty of land. Then the youngest and most fortunate son took his bride back to the palace, where they lived happily ever after.